Yeah, and I just don't think any of the tests this year were so outlandish as far as like volume of movements required.
That 60 calorie
skill.
buy-in
That's too
row.
excessive. It should have been
too much.
11
that's fair.
calories.
That's fair. That's
too
fair
much.
enough.
Let's
I don't
take it
know.
down a notch.
Let's do like a... I
want a
like
damper
let's
eight,
do like a
like
30
6,
rep
7, 8
max
calorie.
thruster. 30 rep max, not a 1. Who wants...
Yeah, one's that's not
one-
enough.
That's not enough.
That's not enough.
Not enough for me. We started.
I thought we already started.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Full Goon Squad in the house.
The Open's over.
The Open is officially over.
Thank fucking Christ.
We have reprieve for not 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, and then we jump right into quarterfinals. Before we get started, because all of you have asked, Misfit Summer Camp is June 23rd through the 25th at Misfit HQ in Portland, Maine. We are making the switch from August when everybody is gone and like, please leave me alone post CrossFit games to June when it is beautiful and more athletes are around and having a good time.
Unlikely to have 12 inches of snow.
Yeah.
Less likely.
Quarterfinals prep camp just went down and it was an amazing weekend, but the weather was not awesome. But no one crashed their car or anything.
I mean, it was kind of awesome. Like, it was good. It was a good snow. Like, it fucked
Hunter enjoyed the snow.
It fucked everything up, but it wasn't like
snowman snow,
wasn't
you
like
know?
ice and like miserable.
Sure.
Like it was.
Yeah.
But he got the authentic.
Well, from a Maine perspective, a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's not bad out there," and I'm
Yeah,
like, "If you're
that's
not
true.
from here, that is not good.
Yeah, that's
That is not good at all."
Yeah.
And like people will be like,
Accelerate slow,
"Oh,
try to
I'm
avoid
from here,
stopping.
here," and it's like that's not the same.
Yeah,
It's not the same as being
at all.
up here. Side tangent: Misfit Summer Camp, June 23rd through the 25th. We will have that up on misfit.camp as soon as possible. We wanted you to be able to go in and put that down on your calendar and be ready. This is the most community-focused camp that we do all year. We make teams. We do some little competitions. Still a lot of, information and lectures and movement breakout groups, but we make sure that the community focus is there because Misfit Athletics is built on the community. Gear release. We have the Misfit Athletics quarterfinals-ish type thing collection coming out. I'm excited for this. I had an idea on vacation. I had more than 35 seconds for my brain to come up with something for the first time in a while. And I came up with a t-shirt design and wasn't able to design it. And Ted swooped in and made my dreams come true. So the Leave It All on the Floor shirt is going to be in there. A lot of people listen to this podcast probably weren't even alive in the 1990s, but we have a nice lightweight hoodie with that like 90s West Coast surf vibe logo. If you're watching on YouTube, I am wearing it right now. And we got some other cool shit. So sharpentheaxeco.com, use your favorite athlete code for the Misfit quarterfinals collection.
That's wild to think about. They weren't alive in the 1990s. That's just upsetting to me.
Well, so when I think like they either weren't alive or they didn't give a fuck about
exactly.
t-shirt designs.
Wait, you didn't
Wow.
know
I
3
was
years old?
both alive and cared about t-shirt
I
designs
was
in the
alive
90s.
and did not care about t-shirt designs. So.
That's not a good sign for us at all. All right, let's jump right into it. We're going to do the top 20. So this is the top 20 overall for the whole Open for Misfits. Unofficial in parentheses, probably not unofficial, probably totally fine.
Bearing a crazy video review thing.
Shout out to everybody who used the hashtag We Are Misfit. Shout out to the top 2,000 Misfit people, but we're going to read the top 20. And then maybe you win some free stuff.
Come on, I
Top
thought you were going to do 2000.
20 Misfit women. Shaylin Laurie, Caroline Spencer, Paige Semenza, McKenna Enslin, Alexis Johnson, Jenna Michelotti, Kelly Clark, Lindsay Hoffman, Lizzie Belbruno, Natalie Jennings, Sophie Shaft, Delia Moises, Cassidy Lane, Rachel Skinner, Ashley Michael, Nicole Dubois, Taylor Quigg, Adrian Winges. I'm not sure if it's Winges or Winges.
Winges.
Maybe you can let us know, but nice job. Danny Sakala and Julie Pettit Lane.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of homegrown misfits on that list.
Yeah, a lot of homegrown misfits. A lot of homegrown misfits who follow Team Misfit affiliate programming that are in this top 20 that might tell you something about being able to enjoy your affiliate class and then have the competitor extra. It all melds together real well. I'd get your gym signed up for Team Misfit affiliate programming as soon as possible.
Cassidy Lane.
Cassidy Lane, congratulations. Please email Jen, Jenn, at misfitathletics.com
last week
with your sizes. I don't think so, but I read the similar names basically every week, so I wouldn't know because I say all of them. Let her know your sizes and your address, and we'll get a gear pack out to you. Shout out to the top 20 Misfit women. Top 20 Misfit men: Luka Jukic, Austin Spencer, Brad Miller, Anthony Como, Mike Olivas, Ross Bradley, George Regas, Taylor Lordich, Alex Carrillo, Adam Salmani, Kyle Clark, Kyle Moline, Mike Kern, Tristan Jones, Cole Fisher, Ryan Breetag, Flamingo Legs, Darren Diaz, Shane Lloyd, and Dylan Weil. I broke character. Damn. It said Sherb for anybody out there who's trying to read between the lines for that for the Easter egg. All right, here we go, Flamingo. Let's do this.
I'm winning this shit. I don't care what name is in it. I pull out, say my own name.
It says Flamingo.
Flamingo legs. Anthony Como.
Anthony, email Jenn, Jenn, at misfitathletics.com with your sizes and where you're from. We'll get you a gear pack. Shout out to the top 20 Misfit men, and shout out to everybody who used the hashtag. I know some people that are real fit that would have been pretty high up on this list that didn't use the hashtag. So you don't get any free stuff. You don't get any shout outs. Add the hashtag next year. All right, gents, what do we think about the Open? It's over. What happened?
It is over.
I thought it was, I guess we'll just compare to last year. I think it was a more well-rounded set of workouts than last year. I think we probably made a couple of, I don't want to say overcorrections, but we swayed from, highly accessible last year, light, relatively low skill. Previous years, it was, we don't give a fuck about the logistics of the affiliate. Last year, it was just like, okay, let's make everything as friendly as possible. Yeah. This year, I think a couple of the gripes, including myself at times, was just like, this is going to be a nightmare to run at the affiliate. But one, it wasn't necessarily the case with a little bit of planning. And two, I think it was a more well-rounded test where athletes with appropriate skills, strength, conditioning were able to kind of rise to the top. A lot of people upset about certain workouts, last workout in particular, kind of feeling like the Open went out on a whimper. And I think that's a very short-sighted, low resolution view of the Open.
We copy paste next year and the year after and the year after in the same way, then I think I would probably agree with that statement. But this idea of when it brings me back to when Castro used to fuck with us with regionals and that 2013 year where it was like literally body weight after being like super heavy. And then it went right back afterwards. Just like, we don't want you to know what to prepare for.
Yeah.
So I'm totally cool with that being in the Open. There are definitely some critiques, I think, that need to be brought up. But the idea of if we stay this way and there isn't an opportunity for the person who's willing to, quote unquote, go there any year in the Open, then I would have a problem with it.
That applies to athletes of all levels, whether it's like you're an elite athlete or a competitor, someone who classifies themselves as a competitor looking to go there, or you're just an affiliate athlete looking to like be able to see progress year after year. We said that at the beginning of the Open. Like, the reason that we want athletes to sign up is so that they have some accountability as to like input their scores. But the goal is that hopefully athletes are doing this for a long enough time that they can start to build kind of like a trend line for, am I getting fitter year after year? And it's like, just because a movement or a set of workouts gets thrown in the Open that aren't necessarily in your capability set doesn't mean it's a bad test. It's like, here's something that you can work on. It's the whole purpose of the Open.
There's some good and some bad. The good, I think, are the fact that we potentially had some workouts that someone who doesn't do CrossFit currently as like their everyday only thing they do could participate in. I really liked the second workout. It kind of reminded me of the 2012 Open where it was just like 7 minutes of burpees, and anybody who thought they were kind of fit and could do that movement, play along. So like if you look at the second workout of the Open, anybody who potentially doesn't already do CrossFit could throw their hat in the ring, assuming they already did the first week and maybe it went whatever, but could throw their hat in the ring and potentially open the community up for more people to check out what CrossFit is. Because even if you couldn't do the RX burpee pull-up, it was just shuttle runs and burpees, which anybody at any affiliate could do, or anyone who's just like wants to work out and test themselves against it. So I thought that element of the Open was really cool. I do sort of agree that they didn't have that like kill yourself kind of workout at the end. Like I kind of a whimper, but at the same time, it's like, you know, the Open, as far as I can tell moving forward, is not so much about necessarily setting the stage for like regionals. That's kind of what like the quarterfinals are now. So it's kind of a, hey, let's rally the community around. Let's do something we all can do together. And the fittest people can still kind of show out that they're better than other people at certain things. But like, let's just get people participating and challenging themselves and potentially doing either first handstand push-ups or a new PR thruster, or maybe get their first toe to bar or muscle up, which is obviously a great thing for someone early on in their journey to try to get excited about the Open and want to keep doing it. And then there's, you know, the other side of me who's like, the deadlift burpee workout just murdered everybody unless you had some crazy level of fitness and you weren't strong enough to pull the barbell. So like that's the only kind of element where like that wouldn't create that stimulus that we're all kind of used to ending the Open. I always go back and think about the 27, 21, 15, 9 calorie row thruster workout and like how terrible I felt after that and like how hard you had to push to earn a good score in that workout. And I didn't feel like the Open had that this year. I mean, you could make the argument, you could run harder and do burpee pull-ups faster, maybe you get the same vibe, but like, I didn't see any of those workouts where historically, like everybody at the end of the Open workout, the clock ends and everyone's on the floor lying around, like writhing in pain and the workout's over. Like that didn't happen this year.
I think you two specifically have a very unique perspective. You're coaching some of the fittest athletes in the world. You're interacting with them on a daily basis, and you're coaching the full spectrum next door. For me personally, you'd have to like slap me in the face and say, hey, let's talk about this from an affiliate athlete perspective. And I'd have to completely rethink, rewire, start totally over with where I'm at with this. Because I think about it from the standpoint of I want teens, MFT, masters, teams on the podium at the CrossFit Games. That's what is in my brain. That's what I'm obsessed with. That's what I work towards on a daily basis. And from that perspective only, the shuttle run should have been a rower, because the having the higher metabolic rate movement, having that like real gassy movement, real challenging movement with the burpee pull up for so many people made the shuttle runs a like absolute throwaway. And it's funny because next door, I thought that this was only from an affiliate perspective. I didn't want to explore it. I don't want anybody that's following MFT to be doing this, but I told everybody next door the second that it was announced, that little shimmy that you do is significantly slower than walking. I just want you to know. Like I said that Friday Night Lights, like, hey, you can do the little like, you know, Maffetone run, but walking is going to be faster in a shuttle run than that. Now, when come to find out, you can beat a lot of people who belong on the front page in that workout by walking. To me, that's just like, okay, that was a bit of a swing and a miss, because in testing, are you going to, like if Boz is standing there with an athlete, like what would he, if they started walking, he'd be like, what are you doing? The hell are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like if you make somebody go get on a machine in between there, then I think you have the ability to, because like rowing at even, you know, in that workout, rowing at whatever, a 2-minute split or something like that does something completely different to you metabolically than taking a stroll in the gym, going through that. I don't think that this was intentional, but I do think it was a little bit of a swing and a miss pairing those two movements together. We knew from a coaching perspective and a programming perspective, we really need to see athletes run in the Open and in quarterfinals. We got to see that. It's like it's the quintessential functional movement, right? Yeah. But I'm not sure that it should have been where it was in the Open this year. And that's like a Monday morning quarterback type of situation. It's hindsight is 2020, but I don't like that. I don't like a gimmicky thing like that being put into the Open, because I think that is the workout where we were supposed to feel like someone shot us.
Yeah.
If there was one.
Trying to think back to like the wall ball rope climb shuttle run from quarterfinals last year and thinking about like in that workout, most people are going to climb the rope pretty quickly. Most people are going to go unbroken on their wall ball. So then the run did matter. That was one of the separators. Obviously, you could say, you know, if you stood at the rope and you jogged a little bit faster, that wasn't worth it than going a little bit slower and going fast up and down the rope. But it felt like last year when we did that workout, that part of the workout mattered more than it did when we did the open workout this past year. And I think, again, I agree with you. This, if it were a different stimulus, or maybe it was 5 shuttle runs the entire time instead of 10 shuttle runs, then there's a bigger premium on being able to go back and forth there. Like it's one of those things where it's a cool idea, but yeah, I would agree that's a swing and a miss. And, you know, I was kind of bummed out to find out later on that people could walk that workout and do better. That like doesn't make any sense.
I think when you watch the person doing the shimmy, like you can see it.
Yeah, it's not fast.
It's like and part of the reason that was in my brain is because I hadn't been cleared to run yet, and I was literally going to do that workout with walking, and I was watching people, and I was like, I can walk way faster than that.
Yeah. I don't. That is, I imagine that's probably like a hindsight thing. It's like nobody in testing was going to do that, right? And it's I think that the workout elicited the stimulus that we were after. I think for a lot of athletes, that first workout was closer to that, like,
It's a weird one, right? It's a weird one. It's like gas muscle. But
I mean, I think for the fittest, kind of the, you know, teens and up, MFT, masters, teams, whatever, like that is a gas tank workout for most of them. Like, yeah, you have to be a little bit strategic on like muscle ups, but it's less strategy and just like how quickly can I get through this. So I don't necessarily view that as much of a muscle overload test. I think we have to put into context, like, yeah, we want that. People wanted that, or we're expecting that really short, gnarly, shitty workout. But the thing is like, it's that workout when it gets programmed isn't always a short, gnarly, shitty workout for everyone, right? It's a short, gnarly, 100%. Shitty workout for the best,
right?
But for a lot of affiliate athletes may not even have they don't quite have the fitness yet to be able to. It's the Fran thing. It's right. Until you can back squat X amount, Fran is not the same workout for you as it is for someone who's strong enough to really move a 95-pound barbell and thrusters.
Yeah.
So I think like, even the deadlift burpee, I would say like a lot of more people were definitely smoked on that because of the accessibility. But I also watched a lot of people next door get to a point where it's just like, I can't deadlift 225 anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily, they were certainly gassed, but it was more just like, you could make the same argument for that 10-minute workout. So, and I think we got to see like kind of that higher end power output for the fittest in this final workout. It wasn't the 27, 21, 15, 9 thrusters and rowing like you're alluding to, but
forever.
Yeah, I think that was, I was definitely expecting that sort of like really shitty finale to the open, but I think it's a good reminder to people that it's like the open is like there's an element of like, let's give people there are so many things that CrossFit has to try to do to make it well-rounded, because if it were exclusively let's make these the 3 best tests we can to find the fittest people on earth, that's a different open than let's try to make this accessible to as many people as possible while making sure that we get the right people to move on to quarterfinals, while also allowing athletes to maybe experience or attempt things that they've never been able to do before, PR, first handstand push-up, first muscle up, whatever it is. There are a lot of eggs being juggled. So while I'm not trying to, stick up for HQ or give an excuse, I think like people have to remember there are a lot of balls in the air as far as
I would want to know their mission statement. I would want to know what I was trying to defend, because I don't know.
To be honest, I was thinking, because like when I was watching I read through some comments, I think it was Hiller's Instagram who made the comment of like, this was a worst open. You got people who are like, you're just saying that for clicks. You got people who agree, disagree, whatever. And I was thinking like, the problem is I like to say this on podcasts, but it comes down to like definitions. What is the purpose of the open? Is it a community event? Is it let's find the fittest is it the stage 1 in finding the fittest human beings on earth? And if it's multiple things, then we have to understand that there's going to be a little give and take. Like we can't if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority.
I listened to actually that podcast specifically.
I did. I did not. I only saw the
interested in hearing
Instagram.
the opinion there, and basically he's making that exact argument. It's like, what is the fucking purpose of this open?
Yeah.
What is the actual reason we're doing it? Is it to find the fittest people? Is it to make it accessible? Is it to get first? He's like, that is one of the major problems. He's like, there's whatever $6 million being made from the open from people signing up and participating. What is that purpose? Is it to further advance the affiliates? Is it to make sure that they can run the games? Like, what is the actual reason why they are doing that? And that's essentially the point.
They're
of
a
that
business.
podcast.
What kind of fucking question is that?
Well, I mean, yes, they have to run their shit, but he's basically like, what is
The question is, what's the mission of the Open?
Yes, yeah, and what's the mission of like CrossFit by running this thing? He's like, it used to be a little bit more clear when there was a certain person at the helm there and what they were doing there.
No, it was not.
But
that is revisionist history. That's fucking bullshit. It was not clear at all when he was running it. I didn't know what was going on at any
point. The wind was blowing.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe 2011 to 2015, I knew what was going on, but that's kind of a totally different thing.
I think that based on like the market, like the common thread over the last handful of years is it's always marketed as a community event. It's like we want people to participate, whether you're RX, scaled, foundations, whatever. I do think that if we were to rack and stack priorities of what the Open is intended to do, I do think the community aspect will be above the let's get the fittest people to quarterfinals, because ultimately 10% of athletes to quarterfinals, like we're going to get the right athletes from the Open to the CrossFit Games. Like eventually they will be filtered out. You're not going to convince me that someone who didn't perform well in the Open is a CrossFit Games level athlete,
huge
right?
It's between 90% and 100, like 99%. That's
yeah. So I think that in their heads, they're probably like, we're going to take a hit. You know, maybe we take a hit here, but it is intended to be like a community event where we can prioritize giving athletes in the gym the opportunity to succeed or to have points to improve on for the next year, because ultimately the fittest people it doesn't matter what the 3 tests are. Like we're going to see the fittest people rise to the top, and maybe the bottom, like maybe from the 88th to 92nd percentile of folks might have shifted around, but from year to year. But ultimately, it's like that's a pretty low priority. The priority is community event, and like the tests have to be well-rounded enough. They have to be good enough to get people to do that. And but the priority is the community.
That's no different than the year they decided to use dumbbells, and potentially people who are going to go and qualify for the CrossFit Games at regionals had a difficult time because they were always games athletes, and then you give them a dumbbell, they get exposed and realize, well, maybe I got to train with dumbbells some more. I mean, you can make the exact same argument there between the 88th and like 92nd getting jumbled up, and those athletes who train barbells only getting exposed by never using dumbbells.
Right, but in CrossFit's mind, it's like the 88th through 92nd percentile. Let's say they sneak in one year to quarterfinals, they're not the next year. Yeah. Ultimately, like respectfully, those are not semifinals athletes. So they're quarterfinal athletes. 1 year is great, 1 year is maybe not so great. But ultimately, like the right enough people are going to get to quarterfinals, and from then on, it's like that's where it's then quarterfinals and on. That's where I would say like tests need to be like very well rounded, and I think that's been the case for the last couple of years of quarterfinals. But the Open's a little tricky.
It is tricky, and the more information that you have and the more history that you have in the sport, so anybody who's out there making content that has a lot of years in the sport, like I know for myself, Ted could give me like 4 different viewpoints, and I could come in here and sell the fuck out of every single one of them. Yeah. I can do the Open was a crock of shit podcast easily, really easily. This is why, and this is why, and this is why, and this is why. And then I could like, hey, let's, defend HQ. And I come in here and I fucking make some charts for you and show you why the Open was perfect and probably everything in between. Yeah. And you're not, from a viewer standpoint, going to know the motives behind why someone would make X video to do that. It could be their exact opinion. It could be their opinion, but it's like completely blurred by what's going on with them personally. Like, how do I feel about the Open? Like, I'm the one who likes the whatever burpee thruster, so this is bullshit, or vice versa. The Open was awesome because I finally get to show my skills. I never get to show my skills before X, Y, and Z. So it's kind of a funny thing to sit back and watch, and we've never had any programming for anything that there wasn't backlash on. in any of this stuff.
People also have to remember, it wasn't that long ago that the Open was 5 weeks long, and they were like, there's a big difference as far as what you can test across 5 and occasionally the 6 if it's like a part B workout versus 3 to 4 events. So like, again, we're asking where people are upset about, like, that's a really fucking hard puzzle to put together. 3 weeks, give everybody a good test, give everybody the opportunity to do something new, make sure affiliate athletes feel like it's accessible, give them the opportunity, make sure that it's not the most logistical nightmare for affiliates that are of all different shapes, sizes, and, numbers of athletes and stuff like that. We do have to give like at least some credit as far as.
I think you already answered it. Like you said, the people who need to be in the top 10% are still in the top 10%, regardless of what the test is. So like, while that can be infuriating if you're normally in the top 30 in the Open every single year, and this year you're 115th, like that can be frustrating, especially as that can set the tone for the rest of your competitive season. If you're like, I am normally this level athlete, and this year's Open knocked me down a peg, that can change an athlete's psyche going into the next stage, which, hopefully we can in this podcast kind of talk about and be like, hey, that's just a test. It's not your season. And, I don't want to say the Open doesn't matter, because I don't think that's a completely true statement, but it has little weight on the rest of your season, but it can have a lot of weight if you allow it to.
Yeah, well, to be honest, it's like, I think after this year, it's assuming that programming might look similar to this year in future years. I think it's actually more indicative that the Open might start to matter a little bit more. Like last 2 years, we're saying like Open doesn't fucking matter. Like Open doesn't matter. This year, I still think there aren't going to be 3 tests where the fittest people on earth don't proceed through the Open and up through the
Jeff Adler and Mal O'Brien at the top of the leaderboard. There you go.
Yeah, and so I think that, but I do think that maybe moving forward, athletes who were thinking like, oh, quarterfinals is a gimme, that's going to start to shift down a little bit, where it's like, maybe it's not. Maybe more athletes do need to take the Open a little bit more seriously, because there's going to be a more well-rounded test. Still going to try to accommodate every level of athlete to make sure they're getting a good workout. But like, maybe the Open does start to matter a little bit more as far as preparation.
Sure. And that's you're battling those narratives when you're programming for the Open. The Open doesn't matter. Okay, I'll make it matter. What the fuck? The Open, now the affiliate level athletes can't do the Open. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to find a gray area between those two things. And honestly, that would be my main feedback, is that it should have been burpee pull up and something gnarlier that was with it. Or
405 deadlifts,
or the burpee pull up should have been
all right.
something like something boring like kettlebell swings, because then if everybody's speed is similar and you don't run hard. Yeah, exactly.
Will's got, keep going.
Yeah.
Want to talk time domain?
What's that?
Want to talk time domain a little bit? I feel like that might be something that's
medium. Yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
I mean,
sort of medium, maybe short.
Our definitions of those things. So like that does have a small weight in the argument,
no,
like,
two of them were medium.
Yeah,
they were literally the same time.
But it's just interesting that was the case this year. And I'm just, we said to ourselves inside, like, where's the longer workout that we liked a couple years ago, where they did the dumbbell thruster toe to bar.
Yep.
I think it was double under. And then the year before that, or a couple years before that, it was the toe to bar rowing, and like, I think it was wall balls or something like that. But
there are going to be 3 dick punches in quarterfinals.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw it out there.
Oh yeah. I told athletes that I was
my
like,
goodness,
based on
there's going to be at least
what
3.
was programmed in the
enjoyed
Open, you are so fucked in quarterfinals. Like, I cannot
And that
imagine.
makes me want there to be like a scaled quarterfinals. Makes me want to like obviously we're not going to snap our fingers, a tiny company, and be like, all right, we're making a separate leaderboard and here's what it should be. But like, I think that would be so cool to be like, okay, you didn't make it, but here's how you might have fared in the whole situation. Of course, you could just do the math on your own there, but I would love for a very accessible dick punch. Carry on.
I don't think anyone else agrees with you. I would really like my Christmas list this year is an accessible dick punch.
Come
That's
over.
what I want for Christmas this year.
Fraggle stick car and a dick punch.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that we didn't have something that went a little bit longer or something that went a little bit shorter. I mean, sort of already talked
Bold
about
take.
the fact. So it's something about that, the fact that we don't have that like terrible, like, the fittest on earth do it in 4 or 5 minutes. Everybody else does it in 10 to an hour. Like we didn't have one of those this year, but it's just, I don't know if it has to happen that the tests need to be that varied at this stage. I mean, we've sort of already talked about it, but I just thought it was an interesting thing there that like we literally go 15 minutes, then we go.
I mean, it doesn't say
14 minutes.
sometimes varied. It says constantly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all right. So play devil's advocate here. Last year was deadlift burpee, right? Was the first one. That was 10 minutes.
That was the second one.
That wasn't the first one.
First
What
one was
was
the
the- what was the
dumbbell
first
snatch,
one?
double dumbbell snatch
So
while walking
15
box
minutes,
over.
15-minute Metcon, 10 minutes for most people,
Yep.
like
Yeah.
10-minute cap.
7
It was
or
10-minute
8
cap.
for the
Yep.
most. And then the second one was also,
That was
wasn't
fast.
it like 7 for the fittest? What was the cap? Was it like a
faster.
12-minute cap?
You and I did. in 7
we were
minutes.
like 7,
Yeah,
so
they were
people
doing
were
like
like 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, so, but then there, okay, so
What
there are
was,
3
what was the final?
thruster,
the
the
thruster
thruster
one.
double under thing.
Right.
That was,
Pull-up,
what was
chest
it,
to
a
bar,
12,
muscle up.
10-minute cap, 12-minute cap? Do you
12.
remember?
I think it was 12 minutes.
Okay, so for most people, you had a 10-minute workout, a 15-minute workout, and 12-minute workout.
Right.
So part of the program is like, first of all, it's like like CrossFit will be like, hey, keep most workouts in like that short, medium time domain, like
Yep.
go long every once in a while. Second, the difference between a 15-minute workout and a 20-minute workout isn't that big from a metabolic perspective, depending on the movements.
That makes me think 23.2A should have been for time. That would have been another way to.
So yeah, and the
Same
fact
workout
that
at
like
30 or
there are
something.
4 time workouts and there are the time cap workouts where like athletes of all levels are gonna like, yeah, a lot of athletes are gonna experience 3 medium time domain workouts just because of how long
Sure.
they're gonna be exercising. So
Yeah.
I think going back, it's more about the kind of the stimulus. I think we got the gas tank workout in that first one. We got the cardio workout and a lift in the second one. And for the fittest, it was a power output workout for the third one. So time domains be damned. I think that it hit the energy systems, so to speak. So
Well, yeah, and the black hole of training that is that time domain is
yeah,
the
that's
one
7 to 15
is the one where you need to go short and really hard and you need to go long and a little bit slower to be able to create the machinery to come back into that space.
Yeah.
So it's the place where they tell you not
You
to
express, yeah, you
essentially
express your
not to
fitness.
train, but where you can really separate yourself from somebody else. What do you guys talked to your athletes at all about what they thought about the Open? Is there like an athlete perspective?
Well, most of the, may not say all my athletes, but most of the athletes were like, that was fun. What's for the lift next? Like that was like the expression that most of them had. Like, what else am I doing the rest of the time? And that is because going into this part of the year, I was telling them like, hey, you need to continue training because most of you have goals that
Sure.
extend past the Open. So there was still like a feeling like as if it were 5 years ago and the Open really did matter because it determined whether or not you're going to the next stage or not. And
Yep.
I mean, it still does, but like at a much lower, risk of not qualifying. So the vibe with the athletes was quite a bit different than years past. I feel like this is the lowest stress level I've ever had with athletes going into it, even though like usually I got a text that told me a score and then a text afterwards with why their score could have been better if things had gone a different way. And that's like what I want an athlete to think about is like constantly be processing their performance and how things could be better because that is using your athlete IQ to try to advance your fitness.
If there was an athlete IQ Open that we've ever had, it was this one.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if you did not know how to break down a workout and how you were supposed to execute it, if you just thought open workout, okay, turn the open gear on, which has existed basically in a very similar way for a very long time. If you did that this year, you probably finished 20, 30, 40% lower than you should have.
And we used to always joke that like all of a sudden right on the Open that people's like completely forgot of all the training they had done and they just all of a sudden come up with the wackiest ideas. You're like, you know what I should do in this workout? Should row at 400 calories an hour and then try to do all 50 toes to bar in a row. And it's like, what? You would never do that if that were like a Tuesday training session. You would never do that. So it's funny with the Open having a little bit lower stress. I don't see that stress response creating silly ideas like it used to.
Yeah.
So I did have a little bit of that going back and forth. Alexis and I went back and forth on strategy and I think
she's been throwing some zingers out for about a
and I
decade
think part
now.
of it's just to get a reaction. She's sort of trolling me to be like, hey, what do you think if I rode at 1,800 calories an hour for 60 calories and then tried to rest a little bit so I could do 50 toes to bar unbroken? I'm like, please don't do that. That's not a good strategy. But again, I think she's a little bit trolling a little bit there, but with her focus of trying to get a team to the CrossFit Games and win the CrossFit Games on that team, like the Open has a little bit less weight to it than it did. But, I'm really excited by the fact that most of them saw the Open for what it was and stayed focused on what was actually the goal for the season, which is performing really well at quarterfinals so they can go to semifinals and then hopefully do well there to go to the CrossFit Games. So kind of a fun Open for me as a coach. Like I didn't really have a high stress moment really for anyone. No one was on the cusp of anything like that.
Yeah.
But when quarterfinal starts, that restarts all over again in about 8 days. And, those mindsets will come back out. But, I'm going to refer back to the Open when I talk to my athletes. Like think about how low your stress was during the Open and what that allowed you to do when it actually mattered. Try to take that same type of vibe into quarterfinals and you get to show out with your fitness instead of your apprehension causing you to lose 5-10% of your overall fitness because of the stress of the event. Like it's okay to be stressed about an event. That's your body signaling that you care enough and you're anxious about it. Like it's a good thing, but you know how to wield that sword is really important.
The idea of creating physical proof for an athlete before telling them you already did this is so incredibly important. We talked about it in last week's podcast with you, just seeing your body language change at the beginning of a workout, knowing like I don't need to go there right now. Like I'm going to push towards the end, and then talking to other athletes about they're like, this is my best Open finish ever, with no redos and no I'm calling you at midnight and I got to know whether it's 1 toe to bar or 3 in this set. Like that's that sort of thing.
You didn't answer. I called.
That doesn't sound like true.
And they did better, right?
Yeah.
So if they did better without all of that extra pressure on there, what does that mean for what we're trying to reverse engineer going into quarterfinals? And to me, anytime I get that opportunity as a coach, like we had a bunch of them. It's a friend of mine because we had a bunch of them at quarterfinals prep camp. I can't do X, Y, and Z. So what do? We break things down into their component parts, and an athlete shows you that they can do the piece of it that they claim they can't. And you go, I don't want to fucking hear it anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore because you just showed me. You just did it. That was it. That was this amazing mountain that you thought you had to climb that you could literally do in a skill drill in 5 seconds. So now let's work on it slowly but surely and then put it into intensity.
It's funny. I joke with athletes when they do stuff like that to me. I take a screenshot of it and I save it in my phone. And I'm like, I'm going to throw that back in your face at some point. And like a positive way, but I'm going to throw that back in your face when you say you can't do something or you haven't done that before or you can't see like how the connection I'm making between two things is there. And you're like, that's not the same thing at all. And then share that message with you and we talk through and you're like, oh yeah, that actually is the same thing. Kind of coming back around again. Because I was nervous, I was apprehensive about it, and that, caused me to put up my defenses, and it's like, oh, when we actually talk through this, we break those back down and realize that like, oh, I actually am good at this time domain or this movement or this combination of things. I just needed to be reminded that like, because I'm anxious about it or nervous about it, it feels like it's not the same thing at all when in fact it is.
I haven't had too many conversations, but of the few that I've had, it's either been, that was a really fun Open, athlete who can perform all of the movements and get a workout, versus this seems more like a quarterfinals workout. I'm upset about it. Yeah. So those seem to be, then the spectrum is broad, but that seems to be kind of the two ends of it.
Right.
And it's,
what was the argument for potentially the quarterfinal? Just the skill level jumped up too fast?
Yeah.
Toes to bar,
handstand
toes to
push-up.
bar, muscle up, handstand, heavy barbell.
Yeah. I'm just curious, like if you couldn't, as a coach,
it was mostly like barbell weight, which blows my mind. It was like, saw those weights with chest, like squat, snatch, chest to bar pull up in 2017, like one of the highest skill, gnarliest workouts that we've done. Chest to bar pull up, overhead squat. Like I don't want to hear it with barbell weight.
Yeah, they're gonna
strict handstand.
Squawking will happen no matter what.
Strict handstand push up was predominantly like
my point was like, what did you say to disarm that athlete, or were you able to kind of convince them that like this isn't or wasn't as big?
I mean, that was a pretty specific instance where it was just like, hey, last year, if this workout, like it was in the context of like, I feel like I did so much better in last year's open versus this year's open. And the counter argument is like, you're a far fitter, more well-rounded athlete this year. And if this workout came up last year, you would have done 2 strict handstand push-ups, not 14, 17. And it's more just a reframing of like, hey, like that I did specifically say, I was like, last year, like, got kind of lucky, like a lot highly accessible, a very accessible open. I think athletes who were maybe missing some of those high level skills, the muscle ups, the strict handstand push-ups, even like volume gymnastics really didn't have too much to worry about with last year's open. And I think this year was just more well-rounded and therefore exposed a little bit more across a broader spectrum.
The target can be really blurry when I just went slower than other people. I need to be fitter. Yeah. So a test that's basically like all work capacity, no skill, you're going to run into. So I just kind of keep at it. Like, where am I at here this year? You know, I fell apart in the toes to bar or the muscle ups or, you know, pressing out of the bottom of the burpee or, you know, any of the high skill stuff. The targets are much more clear.
Yeah. And I just don't think any of the tests this year were so outlandish as far as like volume of movements required.
That 60 calorie buy-in,
that's
bro.
Too excessive. It should have been like
too much.
11 calories.
That's fair. That's fair enough.
Let's take it down a notch.
Let's do like a...
I want to damper
let's do like a 30
6,
rep
7,
max thruster. 30 rep max, not a 1. Who wants?
That's not enough.
That's not enough.
That's not enough.
Not enough for me.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's exactly where I was thinking as you were talking through that, Hunter. Is like, you know, while it's frustrating in the moment, you finish the open workout, you're like, fuck, I couldn't do all those handstand push-ups. It's actually a blessing. You now have a very specific movement to address in the following season. And like, hopefully that's what you can take with your athlete IQ when you go through these things. You can figure out time domains you're not good at, combinations you're not good at, movements you're not good at. Can you snatch under, you know, fatigue kind of things? These are things that you can take from the open, and then even quarterfinals. If you go to quarterfinals with the goal of going to semifinals and not make it, you'd be like, all right, here's my list for next year. And that can be frustrating in the moment, but honestly should be looked at as a gift.
There was nothing tested in this open that doesn't have precedence in previous opens or hasn't been tested in like more like a higher dose. We had the 50 strict handstand push-ups before that 200-foot handstand walk a couple of years ago. We've had
30 wall walks last year and 50 before.
This exact same squat snatch weight progression in 2017. We had obviously the first workout was a complete retest from 2014, like when I was a fucking stoked to finish, you know, to get people were stoked to get muscle ups or even finish the muscle ups. It's like, and I think even like this year, the workout, I think that final workout, the time caps were like, those were, I felt like pretty generous as far as like how quickly you had to move through those things. Like there was definitely
Castro used to do the like,
strategy components.
It's for time, but it's an AMRAP.
It's like,
kind of
you
a
have
situation.
18, you have 18 seconds to finish all of this work. Sorry, you're done. Like I think people got stuck where they were going to get stuck, no matter whether it was an AMRAP or for time, or like there were time hacks. And just again, I think people have a short memory when it comes to like what has been tested, what's acceptable to be tested, what the entire purpose of, you know, variance and CrossFit is after. So it's just like, all right, sorry, like let's work on stuff for next year.
Yeah. For me, from a coaching perspective with my athletes, I wanted to try to strike a balance between what I think a lot of coaches and athletes believe is mutually exclusive between caring about the open and obsessing over the open. And those two ideas can, like, we don't need, it's not both of them or none of them. So the idea of, I've had this conversation with a lot of people in totally different contexts, kind of all over the place, of you love the like crazy competitor out there on the floor at semifinals of the CrossFit Games, and then you can't stand that that's who they are when we get into some of these other times where it's not the most advantageous thing for them being that competitive and that riled up about it. The athlete that is capable of getting to semifinals and the CrossFit Games, not caring about a leaderboard. Like, you know, the joke is Tom Brady will punch you in the face if you beat him in Monopoly. Like,
he will.
Like dumb shit like that. Like, that's the person. That's the mindset. That's the attitude. So telling them to not give a fuck about that it goes against everything that they know. And that's when they get all discombobulated. I'm not allowed to care. Like, I'm staring at the leaderboard in the middle of the night, but I'm just not going to tell him. Like, maybe I'm going to redo this and not tell my coach, like that kind of thing. Yeah. So the idea of, I love that you give a shit, and I want to bank that. I want to like fill up that gas tank of like, I'm coming for you guys. And an example would be like, instead of trying to win the Open, it's your top 20 in your country in the Open. And then maybe your top 10 or so in your country in quarterfinals, or your region, wherever you're going to be going. And then it's, I want to win semifinals, or I want to come in second or third and then try to go be the top 10 at the CrossFit Games. At each stage, depending on how far I think an athlete's going to go, we really like poke the bear a little bit on that. It's like, yeah, you probably could have gone for the world record. You're not gonna. That sucks, huh? Why don't you bank that for quarterfinals? Why don't you bank that for semifinals prep?
Your memory, yeah.
Exactly. Put that in there. Know that you do care and that you are capable, because for me, an athlete believing that they can do something is just as important, or maybe sometimes even more important at this time of the year, than them going and doing it and being like, congratulations, you donated the best performance of the year to 23.1.
You're literally describing how I've been working with Jenna from last year going into this year, because
shout out to you, by the way. She was just at quarterfinals prep camp, and the way that she's moving, the way that she's carrying herself. Yeah. Shout out to her as well, obviously.
More her than me. I didn't really do anything.
Last workout was super impressive to
watch.
watch.
just the way that you guys have, moved the needle over the last year is very impressive. It was cool to see.
One of the things that we discussed is going into last year, she was the young teenager in the 16 to 17-year-old division, and she was nervous because the year before she was 14, 15. She did really well. She came in 5th place. Going and aging up, she was nervous she wasn't going to get there. She ends up qualifying for the games in 9th place out of the top 10.
Yeah.
Lots of tears, lots of anxiety, lots of phone calls around that, which is perfectly normal because she cares a bunch about it. We go to the CrossFit Games. I think she surprises herself. She finishes in 5th, and she's riding a high there. And, she comes back to me, and one of the things that she's told me she's always appreciates about our relationship is that I'm going to hold her to a higher standard that she's going to hold herself sometimes. So she's riding high from the CrossFit Games. And I said, hey, take your time, enjoy your month or two, just having fun, do whatever you want. When you're ready to talk about it, because I do want you to take a break, let's talk about it. And that conversation that we had about that was like, I think you could be on the podium. Like, I think you're that athlete that can be on top of that podium.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things I want to see you try to do, because one of the things that she loves to say is, I'm running my own race. And running my own race, while that's important to be in control and know yourself, what you can do, this is a fucking sport and we're racing people. So running my own race means fucking nothing. So
well, in the right context,
exactly.
It's athlete IQ. In the wrong context, it's an excuse.
It's self-preservation.
Exactly.
It's basically making sure that this is just kind of where I am.
Yeah.
And that led to this leading into this Open where hey, I'm in this place and this many points and I did this score in the Open. And
did she redo anything?
No. She didn't end up doing any of the workouts, but that was sort of where I was getting with this, is that it was funny because I want the athlete who's like, fuck, I could have gone better. And she told me after she did the Open workout here with us, she's like, and she saw Kelly go a little bit later. She's like, I want to do it again and finish. And I was like, save it. So basically what you just described a second ago, save it. So it was funny going back and forth with her. Her dad came up with her to camp, and I'm talking to him about it. It's like, I can tell things are eating at her because she wants to do better and reach higher.
Thing.
But she was also heady enough to realize this is not the time to do that. And so it's kind of what you just described. I want her to care enough about reaching her full potential, but I don't care so much about what your Open performance or whether or not you get a few more reps here at this time. But I do love the fire is there where you're not satisfied. And I literally popped my phone open yesterday and I get a book. She wrote me a book in a text message, which is, normally how we communicate is long text messages, conversations back and forth. And it was just all the things that she learned at camp, what she learned this season. And one of the big things she highlighted is the fire is there and I'm ready to keep going.
Yeah.
And it's eating at me a little bit that I didn't do all the things that I wanted to do. And I was like,
can throw a blanket on that fire by accident early in the season. It can be a real problem.
So I'm just listen, we're going to talk more about this entire message, but this is exactly the kind of response I want to see from an athlete, having just done the first stage of her competition leading up into her season, having been here at quarterfinals prep camp and kind of seeing the environment and learn from other people. Everything that came through in that text message is exactly what I was hoping to get post quarterfinals, post Open, post quarterfinals camp, post open, leading into her season. So it's like I'm just like she's chomping at the bit. This is exactly where we need to be. And it's just funny that as you said that, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like this is literally what Jenna is doing right now.
Telling I'm a competitor is literally my occupation. Don't care about comparing yourself to other people. Good luck.
Yes.
Good luck with doing that. To finish the open conversation, I want to go into nerd mode a little bit. And what's really cool about the open from a programming perspective in terms of Misfit Athletics is, I'll do this for the listeners, audio. Those are the top 20 lists. If you're watching, you saw me waving the top 20 lists like an asshole. I can take this list right here and I can go through it and I can find if there's a pattern of standard deviation from your average score that lines up across the board, then I know that there's something in our programming that we can go in and manipulate and make a big change for athletes. From a super small sample size, I was like pissed last year about the deadlift workout. Deadlift is a very tricky thing, and we've had a interesting relationship with it programming wise, because it's one of those things where it's almost like it's like the difference between, I don't know, Ted, what do they say, between like baking and cooking, or a chef and a cook, like just with the measuring. Like this is programming deadlifting is baking. Yeah, you don't measure with your heart when you do that. When you're baking or programming deadlifting, there's a sweet spot to how do I move the needle with this without driving someone into the ground. So we had our year-long progression of deadlift this year based on that information from the open last year. I want my damn deadlift workout in quarterfinals. I can tell you that right fucking now.
405. Let's go.
I'm okay with it either way because everyone knows what those workouts felt like and the metabolic demand of, other than you assholes, basically everybody else. Sometimes I wonder without the YouTube version of this, when I say you assholes, someone's like, oh, gee, thanks. I'm talking about the chuckleheads. Yeah, that they love deadlift and high rep deadlift, although Sure pretended he didn't last year.
I forgot for a minute. I forgot for 10 minutes.
I'm going to break this up into 42 sets.
Preserving athlete IQ.
Saving myself for the burpees.
Exactly.
So I can blaze through those, baby.
My strength, which is those burpees.
So again, when we get data from the open and from quarterfinals and from semifinals, there's two lenses that I look at it through. Community-wide of, again, do I see a deviation from what we believe your fitness level is based on the data that we have, to patterns of this wasn't good enough, like across the board. And then the other place that I go is I watch and I talk to coaches and I try to figure out at the MFT semifinals and games level, what are we trying to do here? How are we trying to move the needle here? Because if there is standard deviation across the board in a sample size that small, that's something that's very obvious and something that we can address with semifinals programming, games programming, and then work into the, the bigger stuff over the course of the next year.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think back to last year and like the noticeable changes we made outside of the deadlift that really made a difference. But like, I think the progression of the bitch work throughout the season made
I could give you an answer to that, but it would take me an hour.
Yeah. Well, we got some time, right, Ted? We got some time. But, I think about the bitch work that we did throughout the season and just like the combinations of things. And, that's the thing that my athletes have spoke to me the most about, was just all the data that was collected. And I think that was probably the biggest difference between last year, even though I think as long as we've been coaching here and doing the programming, we've been talking about like, you should be learning from your experiences, but we really made that a highlight of like the last, 18 to 24 months. And it's just fun to see athletes really like leaning into that and learning more from that and what that does for their fitness. It basically takes away some level of that anxiety. Like if anxiety was like a layer of like blankets on top of you, it's like pulling like, 8 of them off the top and being like, all right, now I'm not as anxious because I'm more in tune and I'm more aware of this stuff. And it doesn't feel like as big a stretch to try to call upon it because it becomes the everyday. Like this is an exercise we're asking athletes to do every single day and every single piece. It just now is part of your like automatic routine. And I've noticed that to be a huge change and something that athletes have echoed to me the entire time kind of leading up to the open and through the open. It's like, I can call upon all of these workouts and it's, something we actually did at quarterfinals prep camp. We had a workout and we brought up like, hey, look how many gas tank workouts you did of this duration. Look how many times you did chest to bar pull-ups. Look how many times you rode there. And like, all of a sudden you have 50 data points from the last 6 months. And you're like, oh, now I really do know how these will go and what they'll be like. It's not just like pissing into the wind and see what happens.
Next podcast that you listen to that isn't quarterfinals content, is going to be the sort of what now for athletes. Obviously, if you qualify for semifinals, what now is semifinals prep. But we have a completely new, totally different attack plan for the hatchet community that basically starts like a week or so after quarterfinals, correct? March 27th. I am really excited for that podcast. So if you're in that camp of post open and or post quarterfinals, what now? What am I supposed to do? Like, how do I find that direction and that purpose and that meaning in the longer stretch? So a lot of athletes basically get to pick it back up in the fall. And if you want to be one of those athletes that gets to pick it back up in the fall, you have to start somewhere around March 27th. And we've got basically an entire podcast coming where you're going to get to listen to what we think needs to happen and exact instructions on how to personalize it for yourself while still being part of like a bigger community, people to compare scores with, all that good stuff.
I know we're going to talk a lot more about it on that podcast, but there's a good chance that you didn't find yourself on that list. You might be one of those people that doesn't always listen to everything that we have to say when it comes to training and competing. And I'd wager that most people on those lists take that stuff to heart. And that's one of the reasons why they were able to do that. Obviously, lots of hard work went into being able on that top 20 list or just qualifying for quarterfinals at all. But, I do think that podcast will kind of shock some people with the advice we give them potentially.
Yeah.
But if you actually listen and take it to heart and make it your mission to follow along with what we say in that podcast.
I don't think they'll be shocked, but some people might think they belong in one camp versus the other when it's very clearly like I need to be on the conditioning track versus the strength track, like that kind of thing.
Strength track for me and conditioning for you, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not gonna touch a barbell.
Yeah, you probably should.
I don't need to.
Dangerous.
And a reminder, because we have so many new listeners this time of year, you are going to get a preview very quickly at the beginning of quarterfinals somewhere on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or somewhere, where we are going to tell you the immediate, like, hey, quarterfinals have started. This is what you need to get after. And then from there, you have to be a Misfit Athletics subscriber to get the rest of the content for the rest of quarterfinals. And that will be at misfitathletics.com. And you can sign up for a 2-week free trial. If you're a masters or teens athlete, you should jump on that immediately because our masters and teens quarterfinals and semifinals prep has begun. I don't know what day this posts, but it's
a few days in by now.
Yeah, it's already started.
It's a day.
And because of the way that we peak, you are not too late to jump into that. Anything else, gentlemen?
Nah, I'm good.
If you're complaining about the Open, your off season starts March 27th.
Yeah, I like that. All right, ladies and gents, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast, and thank you to our show sponsors. You can head to properfuel.co and use the code word Misfit to save on hydration, pre-workout, post-workout. Properfuel.co, use the code word Misfit. Sharpentheaxeco.com for the Misfit quarterfinals collection. Use your favorite athlete code there. Season has kicked off, and you save money and you donate money to the athlete to help with their season. And of course, this list over here that I keep making the noises with is filled with people who follow the Team Misfit affiliate programming. We have competitor extras so that you can know how to stay as a part of your community, stay in class, and then have a little bit of that extra work there that actually fits with the programming and is not just piecemealed from a bunch of different websites. And of course, misfitathletics.com for your 2-week free trial. See you next week for quarterfinals.